have a red button up. There we go. We are now live. So Senator White, why don't you explain the amendment to us, and then we'll see if there are any questions. And
Okay, sure. I will try to explain it a little more thoroughly than I did this morning. And then if you have any questions, feel free to ask me and I'll try and answer them. But the section that last sentence poses many challenges for the CUDs. The first one, well, basically, it doesn't apply to any other municipality and their confidential documents. They are not required to release confidential documents after their projects are over. And the only similarity with other municipalities is around location of property exemption. If they were discussing a particular property, then after the project is done, they can release that information, but they don't have to release information about trade secrets and other proprietary information. So just an example of with this sentence in there, they would be compelled to release otherwise confidential trade secrets or underlying data that otherwise would be confidential as they relate to other projects. For example, if a financial formula was used for several projects, revealing once a project was over, then they would be required to reveal that financial formula, even though it applies to ongoing or future projects. And that could be a real disadvantage to the CUD. It also, what we heard from a number of people was that it could mean that other entities would be unwilling to cooperate with the CUDs because they know that any trade secrets they have in their business arrangement would be compelled to be released afterwards. And that would, so where there's a fear that entities would not work with the CUDs for fear that their trade secrets and proprietary information would be compelled to be released to the public. So those are the three main points: that it doesn't apply to other municipalities, that it puts them, they would be compelled to release information about one project that could be applicable to another project or an ongoing project, and that entities would be reluctant to work with them for fear that their trade secrets would be compelled to be released.
okay, Senator Sarakian.
I can't hear.
Michael,
You are
you're
mute.
muted.
Sorry, Senator White, is it possible to cure the subsequent release of another party's information? Can you bifurcate it and say, except no need to release other entities' trade secrets, or protect those documents that include other trade secrets?
I suppose you could, but there would also be information that the CUD itself had that would be harmful. And this is the general municipality trade secret language, that they may withhold information which, in quotations, which a commercial concern makes efforts that are reasonable under the circumstance to keep secret, and which gives its user or owner an opportunity to obtain business advantage over competitors who do not know it or use it. So you could, I suppose, say they'll only release their own trade secrets or their own proprietary information, but it still doesn't answer the question about whether or not they have information that they're using in one project. And when that project is over, they would be compelled to release all that information, even though much of the proprietary information or trade secret information would apply to another project, which would put them at a disadvantage.
So,
And this applies to no other municipality.
No, that was going to be my next question. How do we deal with solid waste districts and other comparable entities? I think we should just be consistent, right? We're
You're right.
giving
They do
folks-
not have this clause. Nobody else does.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Senator Brock.
As I'm trying to understand the implications of this, one question is we look at public-private partnerships as potentially being an integral part of how CUDs operate. And I could understand, for example, a particular formula, which I think was mentioned as being the method of calculation that might give a competitive advantage. But the question is, could you take things like an entire NDA, such as that being negotiated right now between one of our CUDs and Consolidated Communications? Could that exempt that from public knowledge and the nature of those negotiations and the implications associated with it? In other words, how do you put a fence around it?
Around the information that is exempt?
Yes.
Well, I think that the information that's exempt is what I just read. If the commercial concern makes efforts that are reasonable under the circumstances to keep secret, then the same could apply to the municipality. So
Well, if the entire nature of an NDA, one could argue that we conduct an NDA to say how we work together and what we do and who does what and how is it done. You know, how do you separate out what's contained, for example, in an NDA between a CUD and a legacy provider, so as to have the public be aware of how this potentially $250 million is actually being spent and to whom and who's benefiting from it?
well, they have to release their budgets. That isn't private, that isn't confidential information, but they do have to release that.
How it's being used may be, at least that's what seems to be on the surface. Who, in terms of even the public have an awareness of what those secrets are, is there any oversight of what's being claimed?
You mean about whether or not it's confidential?
Yes.
The same, I guess it would be the same as for every other municipality. If somebody felt that it wasn't, that they were claiming confidentiality for, or an exemption for something that shouldn't be, they,
Anybody know?
what?
How would anybody know?
I am not sure how to answer that. I know that I don't believe it's been an issue for other municipalities around the release of information. And I'm not sure how to answer that about how people would know. I guess they could ask for all the records and then see what was denied to them and under what grounds.
Oh, it's court, isn't there?
Yeah, there's also always
Yeah.
court, but a person could ask for name a whole bunch of records, and then if the CUD claims the exemption, they have to specify under what exemption they are denying the request. That's clear with all public records requests that they
Well,
have to.
I guess one of the reasons I'm raising it is A, this came so quickly. I didn't have a chance to we certainly haven't discussed or to fully understand the implications of what we're doing here. And I've just noticed the number of cases of public records requests being made to CUDs already when they're not up and running that don't seem to be being answered. And it's just the issue of the secrecy is a concern to me.
Well, I can tell you that part of the reason that some of them aren't being responded to is because they're broad, huge requests. They're not focused. They are requesting everything and from everybody, and it is consuming hours and hours and hours of people's time to respond to these requests. And I'm not sure that whenever we have people that make just broad requests of everything, that just takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And we have to recognize that the CUDs are mostly staffed by volunteers. And we could, what I would suggest is that there was a suggestion that we let the authority determine what is confidential and what should be released, but they would have to make a broad announcement or a broad pronouncement about what would be released, and it wouldn't address the particular issues of all the CUDs and all the different aspects of what they're dealing with. So that was a suggestion that was made, but the problem is that the authority would be spending most of its time looking at the specific projects and what was releasable and what wasn't releasable. So that suggestion was not well received by most everybody.
Well, I know that we have in the public records law the ability, at least on paper, to charge people for public records requests that are beyond the basics and the norm, something that we haven't been using. And that's an issue that I've raised before about impact that it has on many of our agencies, including the Public Service Department. And I understand that we need to get at that. But I look at 1 VSA 315, which basically says officers of government are trustees and servants of the people. It is in the public interest to enable any person to review and criticize their decisions, even though such examination underlined may cause inconvenience or embarrassment. It also goes on to say these provisions shall be liberally construed to implement this policy, and the burden of proof shall be on the public agency to sustain its position. And I'm just concerned that we are taking a whole range of issues in an area that is of real public interest, and we're putting a fence around it without any real ability to understand what these CUDs are doing with millions upon millions of dollars of public money if we grant a blanket exemption.
Well, it isn't a blanket exemption. It's not exempting anything here. It's they have the same exemptions that all municipalities have. All we're saying is that the addition of this one sentence puts them at a real disadvantage. They still are under the public records law and have to release information and have to justify why they're not releasing information if they don't. So I saw both Senator Hardy and Senator Pearson had comments. Senator Cummings, do you want?
I saw Senator Hardy first, so I'll do her and then Senator Pearson.
You're muted.
There you go.
I am muted. I'm usually pretty good about that, but thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Senator White, for your committee's work on this. I understand and respect your concerns, Senator Brock. We're, trying to get a lot of money out into the field very quickly. However, these are municipal entities that we are funneling most of the money through. And what the GovOps committee is suggesting is consistent with the way that we treat all municipalities in the state. And it doesn't seem to me that we should be creating a different standard for the CUDs when we're asking them to be the entities that are the prime entities for ensuring the build out of broadband throughout our state. If we want to take a broader look at public records access of municipalities in general, that is something we could do in the future. But it just doesn't seem it doesn't seem right to me that we would treat the CUDs differently than we treat any of the other municipalities in the state. And we have asked in this bill for many, many reporting things, the business plans, the annual reports, the open meeting law, the open records law. They will be subject to a lot of public scrutiny as they're moving ahead with these plans. Also, all of the contracting and state financial reports that are required. And on top of that, all the federal ones as well, because most of the money that we will be giving to them is federal funds. So I think that there's a lot of layers that will ensure public scrutiny of the work and the funding. And if we want to take a broader look at municipal open records laws, I think that's something the GovOps committee could do in a future session. So
We
I'm
do public
supportive of
records.
it.
We do public records reviews every single year.
Every year, exactly. So I am supportive of this amendment because it makes it consistent with municipal law in other areas. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Pearson.
Thank you. I actually don't have too much to add. Senator Hardy struck the chord that I was after. I was one of the people asking that GovOps look at this. They've done this. They bring it more aligned with other municipalities. But I do think, to Senator Brock's point, it's worth pointing out that the board has total access to those contracts. We have made that clear over and over. And if that's not working, we have another issue to look at in another year. But that does give me, I think, gives us some protection on the prudent use of these public dollars, significant public dollars. And so between confidence in GovOps that has more expertise, the support coming in very plainly from the CUDs for this change, and frankly, their concern without it, and the board's complete view of all of this, I think we should move forward in support of this. Thanks.
Senator Brock and
No,
then
I
Senator
think now
Bray.
that I heard from Senator White vis-a-vis her position in terms of aligning this with what we do with other municipalities, I understand this better than I did, having read it momentarily before the Senate floor session today. I still have a nagging concern about this. For all of us, the issue of secrecy at government should be of concern, because we've seen so many instances, not just elsewhere, but also in Vermont, where we've had problems as a result. This is going to go to conference. I would be supportive of Senator White's amendment at this point for the limited purpose that it does. I would hope, though, that in conference, when we look at the board's access to the contracts and other activities of the CUDs, that we would add something specific that says that they will pay attention to secrecy agreements or agreements to keep information from the CUDs out of the public domain, and make an active determination as to whether it is or is not appropriate. I do think that reviewing the whole issue of secrecy vis-a-vis government dealings with private entities is something that I would ask GovOps to take a look at in the future, because it is an area that has I think, a high potential for abuse. Not that there's any evidence of that here.
I think I would support that. I also think we need to look at what happens when individuals request hundreds of hours worth of public records and do not pay the bill.
Right. They should.
Um,
And I think that is something that I would love to see us take a look at.
Yeah, that is an issue. It is it's spending taxpayer money. And taxpayers are supposed to pay the cost. It's a fee. And there should be a penalty for non-payment, especially gross non-payment. Okay, Senator Bray.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I was one of the people who also asked that we have a little committee time for this discussion. I found it very helpful, and I have nothing more to add other than I support GovOps proposed amendment. Thank you.
Okay, so committee, show of Senator White.
I was just going to apologize that we got this to you so late. I tried to send it off to you while you were still meeting yesterday, but we didn't get it settled until later.
There were several things that came in during committee by email yesterday. Unfortunately, watching documents, watching the agenda, and running the committee and reading emails and texts at the same time is even beyond my legendary ability to double task.
I understand because I don't read my emails while I'm running a committee. So
I don't either. I try not to. Too many screens. So committee, show of hands. Support for the amendment. Okay, so I can report on the floor that we have agreed, I believe there are 7 of us, 700, that we support the amendment with the proviso that we'll try during conference to see if, to make it clear that the board that we are establishing does have access to those records and will be focused on making sure that secrecy is being used appropriately. Okay, thank you. We all get about 10 whole minutes, 9 maybe.
Thank you.